hundreds of Ugandan soldiers have been deployed in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. It's part of a joint operation with Kinshasa to secure bases used by the Islamist-affiliated Allied Democratic Forces militia. The ADF is blamed for massacres in eastern DRC and attacks in Uganda's capital, Kampala, just last month and in October. Over the weekend, the DRC announced that it had approved a Ugandan offer to pursue the ADF on its home ground. Uganda's armed forces spokesperson has said that they are hopeful that the operation will hunt down, quote, terrorists.
Vous avez suivi hier dans la matinée qu'il y a eu des tirs d'artillerie, des frappes sur des cibles qui ont été identifiées en République démocratique du Congo. Nos hommes étaient sur terrain, ils ont été appuyés par les forces armées de la République ougandaise.
Let's talk about the situation then in the Eastern DRC and Uganda. We're joined tonight by the African Affairs Specialist, Dr. Charles Sinkala. Dr. Sinkala, always a pleasure to have you on Newsroom Africa. So let's begin with the ultimate objective by the ADF. We saw an attack near, well, in central Uganda, in the capital Kampala, just last month. Before that, there was an attack that left a waitress at a restaurant dead. What are they trying to achieve?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tambekile, for having me, and good evening to your viewers. The objectives are very well known. You know, the ADF, those are terrorist organization which has been funded by those who has interest in those areas that they operate. You know, it has been reported that, the previous regimes, especially in Democratic Republic of Congo, was funding them, to pursue their interest, either in the mineral wealth regions of the mining communities or to protect multinational installations, as well as also they've been contracted by the United Nations to keep peace and security. And all this goes to the Africa's loss of grip in terms of peace and security. And this has been overtaken by the private military and security companies. You know, these are the ones who are linked and have kept a very thin line in terms of difference between them and the mercenaries. And that's why they create confusion on the other side of the country. Meanwhile, on the other side, they are mining, taking whatever their interest freely, because now they also the state of Democratic Republic of Congo has oftentimes contracted them to maintain peace in situations that they create confusion.
So the ADF, as you say, I mean, its roots go back to the mid-1990s, at least officially, when record-keeping of their movements began. They want to control territory. They want control of mineral resources, as you say, mining. It's not the first time they've faced a straight-on government assault, and they've now got some form of affiliation to ISIL. Are they stronger now than they were 26 years ago?
Oh, much stronger than the killer. You remember, we have the warlord who is well known on the continent. This one is a Russian Wagner group, from Russia. It's a weapon manufacturer. He's got every presence in war-torn African countries, in Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, Mozambique, and Nigeria. He funds these terrorist activities. What they do, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of destruction, they will bomb even a village, to make sure that people run away. And because of our state and security capacity in terms of funding and logistics, with state security and the police, which is very poor, especially in Democratic Republic of Congo, they take advantage to go to those areas and freely fly diamonds and other mineral resources that they can take out of the country. So it is a tragedy that Africa has become like this, and I think the regulation in terms of legislation of private and military contractors has to be watched freely, because you can see that this Wagner also donates military equipment and uniforms, to a lot of state governments which are well known on the continent. And if they donate that military attire, there's nothing wrong that will stop that military attire to be in wrong hands. And these are the conflicts that we are seeing now in Ethiopia and Sudan, where military attire was worn by wrong military people, and they bombed a region. And now the Sudanese government are condemning the Ethiopian government because that IP of the military attire is in the wrong hands. And so these are the conflicts that we have in Democratic Republic of Congo. And the more they keep burning and killing civilians, the more they keep their industries going because they create that confusion.
So we'll speak about the proxies. Often whenever there's a conflict, we're all very familiar with the fact that often, even when there's a domestic conflict, there are usually international interests at play. But let's talk about the strategy of the ADF. As you said, it has in the past targeted people in villages. We saw what shocked people was the explosion in Kampala in late November. What is it going to take for the governments of the DRC and Uganda to secure the safety of the people in these areas while they pursue the ADF in these vast forests?
Look, Yoweri Museveni over the years supported that ADF. Because they were fighting, they partnered with the Democratic Republic of Congo government to fight the Rwanda's insurgencies who was advancing into Democratic Republic of Congo. So him too is not that clean, so the Kampala issue and the bombing, now is coming around and is trying to condemn it. They have become more powerful now, more than 10 times. What they need, the two regions, is now to involve the AU and the United Nations and see how they can, try to change some legislation in terms of involving these military contractors and the mercenaries who are taking over. And as well, they need to capacitate their security and military forces, not using contractors in the line of defense for the civilians. They must use their own people, the people they have trained and the people they trust. Because these military contractors, who they are spending nearly 60% of their national budget in terms of military contracting, these contractors, they are actually the ones who are, killing the civilians, and at the end of the day, the head of state who is in government at that stage will be charged, for crimes against humanity. But so he was trying to protect it.
Allow me to come in there, pardon me. You mentioned the President Yoweri Museveni and the complicated history between Uganda and the DRC, which have come together now to pursue the ADF. Uganda has for years been accused of involvement in the civil wars in the DRC, 1998, I think it was, to 2003. In 2005, the International Court of Justice, in fact, said Uganda owed the DRC reparations for plundering its natural resources and the occupation in eastern DRC. How much does that complicate the relationship now? Is there a way in which they can separate the two, the anti-ADF agenda and their outstanding issues, even though Uganda has for years, under the Museveni government, says it really was not to blame for what happened?
Look, now the new government of Felix Tshisekedi in Democratic Republic of Congo has got a very different view in terms of the ADF, as the previous government of Joseph Kabila, who was actually funding them, so hence they are trying to team up with the, now the angel, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who now has interest because now they are attacking Kampala because they are advancing to those regions as they are looking for wealth. These were funded. So it's a bit complicated now that he has turned to be an angel, especially after supporting them for a very long time. What he needs to do is now to engage the region security, and make sure that, these instabilities are condoned. But we have a problem in Africa, especially in that region. Africa does not have a permanent seat at the United Nations, Security Council. Most of those countries who are there who have permanent seats, the United States of America, China, Russia, France, and the United Kingdom, partly and most of them are involved in these mercenary activities on the continent, especially France. We need to address these in the sense of the African continent, where we African countries becomes the brothers keeper for nations such as these war torns, and start reviewing the policies and the legislation in terms of private and military security companies that we trust that they are protecting us. Even here in South Africa, I can tell you for free that those who shot the Marikana miners there were not the South African police services, were privately hired security companies wearing South African uniforms, and that's how the game works, because they protect the interest of their mining minerals or whatever infrastructure that they have, these investors. So it takes whatever, and these the problem, they do not fall in the ambient of the law like the South African Police Service and then South African Defence Service, for example, who has to get a command either from the minister or from the commissioner. These, they are controlled themselves as they are hired. They do things as they wish. And hence we have seen that the conflicts now are escalating without political will to stop them.
So, final question then. This, at the moment, is not a mission that's been given a time frame as the DRC and Uganda go after the ADF. Can the continent as a whole afford another protracted conflict, even if it's for a year, two, when you look at what's going, for example, what's going on in Ethiopia, in Tigray, for example?
No, not really. I have a view that now once now we're having agitators of peace, that Africa should now look after herself, and we must stop these hired mercenaries or hired military contractors. Even here in South Africa, we had recently, not long ago, that the Nigerian government hired a company called DEC Advisory Group, to go and exterminate the Boko Haram in Nigeria, which the South African government came out very strongly and condemned it. But we haven't seen any arrest or prosecution towards that. And I think the review of the approach to recognize these mercenaries has to be changed. Yes, the Security Council hasn't ratified the extermination of the training and the practice of mercenaries, because of such of the reason that I mentioned earlier, that the 5 countries sitting on the United Nations Security Council are complicit to this situation, which is keeping their industries going.
And in Ghana, of course, we know the story to have been that the mine workers were massacred by police officers on that day, 16th of August in 2012. For now, though, Professor, Dr. Charles Sinkala, good to speak to you. Thank you very much for being on the program tonight. That was